So this is a very good point. Like, this is an important point, right? So the thing is, AI requires data. Your notes are data. If you don't have any data, then obviously it's not going to work as well. Now keep in mind, like, part of the reason ChatGPT works so well is it's had, like, God knows how much data fed into it, all right? But that's generalized data from across the web. Whereas in MEM, it's your personal data. And so what you have to do is you have to hit what I call a critical mass of knowledge, which is about 50 to 60 notes, when you start to see the ability to make connections between them. Because if you think about it as a network, and each note as a node inside of a network, what you're getting basically is network effect. So the more of it that you put into the system, the more the value of it compounds.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. Today, I am joined by Srinivas Rao. He is the host of the Unmistakable Creative podcast and also the author of a new book, which, Srini, you're going to have to tell me right away. I should have written down the book. The book title is...
The Artificially Intelligent Creative.
The Artificially Intelligent Creative. So we are here to talk about, as you probably guessed from the title of that book, creativity and artificial intelligence. So, Srini, go ahead and give us maybe a 60-second rundown on who you are in more color than I did, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Sure. Well, I'm the host of a podcast called The Unmistakable Creative, which started by accident about 13 years ago when I got out of business school and I couldn't find a job. So, I was the beneficiary of a 10-year head start in what eventually became a massive cultural trend. And at this point, I've interviewed about 1,000 people. I've written 2 books with a publisher, done a lot of public speaking, or company speaking at organizations like Citibank, Lockheed, UPS, and a few others. So it's kind of this, multi-hyphenate career, if you can call it that. To be honest, it's more like, whatever I'm interested in, I do next. But on top of that, the big thing that has really taken up my time over the last couple of years, last 2 to 3 in particular, is a note-taking tool called MEM, where I basically borrowed, my friend Gareth's business model, and just started, making YouTube videos every week and spending $5 a day on ads, and that's grown into another business in and of itself. And the reason I got so excited about MEM and its potential was because it was something that I was using daily to organize my own information, just because the sheer volume of it that I was dealing with was so significant. So we're talking, 3 podcast episodes every week get published. I publish a blog post. I write a newsletter on Sundays. I produce a YouTube video once a week, send out a newsletter, and then on top of that, I have to maintain courses. So it's a significant volume of information more than anything else. And I have ADHD, so when I saw MEM, which was sort of this true centralized workspace that gave you access to all your data from one place, it just kind of everything good?
Yeah, sorry. I was pulling up your YouTube channel while you were talking.
No,
I'll just roll with this. I was going to say,
your
YouTube channel.
No.
Your YouTube channel is called Maximize Your Output with MEM. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So anyways, so I started this Maximize Your Output with MEM YouTube channel. I built a course because I first learned about sort of this idea of network thinking and how we could organize information differently when I took a course about Rome. And I loved the ideas conceptually. It just didn't gel with me the way that I thought it would because it was just a tough interface to use. But MEM came along.
And you say Rome, that's another app. Rome,
yeah,
R-O-A-M?
Rome Research is a note-taking tool, yeah. So anyways, that in a nutshell is kind of what leads to this book, The Artificially Intelligent Creative, because since then, AI has just become sort of deeply embedded in our lives, and more than people realize. I think a lot of people don't understand just how much we can do with these in how short of a time, which just exponentially increases your power. And as somebody who had, not only a massive volume of work every week or information to deal with, but also a massive body of work that had already been created that could easily be repurposed at scale and at a speed I'd never been able to do before, it effectively was, this is the way I described it when somebody was Mem brought me up to their office for a documentary. I said, it's like I've been sitting on an information gold mine and somebody handed me a pickaxe, not just a pickaxe, but an automated pickaxe. And you think about all that information, right? Like when you can manipulate it, massage it, and do all sorts of things with it, all through simple, natural, sort of large language models, that opens up a world of possibilities. It's like, think about this. I got 1,000 interviews I've done for Unmistakable Creative, 4 books, and I've read over 1,000 books. Now, imagine having all of that in one AI-powered note-taking app to basically do whatever the hell you wanted with. I mean, it was like, basically, it's like I've just unlocked the matrix to my brain, in a lot of ways. The first time I experienced it.
So give me I went to the it's mem.ai, and now I'm like, okay, so this is, I've never heard of this. I'm curious to the extent, I would assume you're using this for everything in your entire life. You're just like, if you have a thought, you put it down here, or are you specifically being intentional about what you add?
Well, so that's a good question and an important question, right? I think when it comes to the information that we capture, there's value in being intentional, regardless of whether you do it, with a pen and paper or even in a note-taking app. With that in mind, to answer your question, like the idea for me is that all information flows into Mem, and so that way, when I need something, I don't have to go looking through 1,000, because if you think about if you look at productivity issues, right, over the last probably 10, 15 years, what have we done to deal with productivity issues? We've built distraction blocking tools. We've built task management tools. We've built timers. We've built all sorts of shit to try to optimize humans' ability to focus on the task at hand. But the funny thing is that all those are just Band-Aids on bullet wounds, because they don't address one gigantic root cause of 90% of these problems: the way that we organize and access information. And if you think about the way that you organize and access information in any task you need, right? There are probably 4 foundational elements to any task. You have people, you have process, you have information, and you have tools, right? Which basically makes up the 4 sort of pillars of any workflow. And the thing is that when you have to go to different tools for the information, you need another tool to follow the process, another tool to access the information, another tool to connect with the person you need to collaborate with. The inevitable byproduct of that is a shit show. There's no way that you can actually address the problem when information is put into silos. It just literally, it's the height of stupidity to think. And the stupid thing about this, right, is that this is how all of us, myself included, have organized information for almost our entire lives. What Mem does is it allows you to organize information the way you do in your head, which, if you think about the information in your brain, you can recall what's associated with what with zero friction, right? Your brain is basically just a series of nonlinear associative networks of experiences, knowledge, and all that. Now imagine if the information you had access to was as well. That effectively changes the speed at which you can create. You can create at the speed of thought, is what you're getting to, and then layer AI on top of that. It's basically, you have a thought, and you and I could do this right now. We could plan out a project in 10 seconds. Like, maybe not 10 seconds. I can show you if you want. Like, it'll look like magic.
Let's do it. I'd love to see that.
Okay. So do this. I'm going to share my screen with you. What we're going to do is we're going to go into Mem, and I'm going to just show you a project template that I have, and we're just going to make up a project. All right?
Okay.
So give me just a sec here.
I have an interesting one that I don't know if to use as a demo. It's like something that we kind of have already planned to a certain degree, but I'm curious if it might be, obviously it's going to be faster if you just make up the constraints and the goal of the project.
No, we can totally make up the constraints and the goal, because I think that would be more valuable. But hold on, I'm having trouble accessing Mem. You know what, let me just open it up on the web. That'll be easier.
Oh, because it's a desktop tool also?
Yeah. I don't like web-based apps or mobile apps because I'm 40-something, so I prefer to actually just use it. Like, I really don't like mobile apps. I have a hard time with them. But I'm 45, so like, I didn't grow up with a fucking cell phone in my hand. All right, so sidekick tab. There we go.
I think
All
it's
right.
this is one of the reasons I love. I just as a side note, like podcasting in general is like I live for moments like this where I'm like, today, April 28th, when we're recording this, I previously had no idea that mem existed.
Yeah.
It's like, and now what's like, how is my life going to be different because of this one tool? Like, I'm excited. So go ahead
All
and
right.
show us what you want to show us.
All right, so let's come up with a project. I'm gonna put in a template here for a project that I have saved in here really quick. So this is a template based on Tiago Forte's book, Building a Second Brain. I just took the information that he had inside the book and I just turned it into a reusable template. So, basically we can organize this project however we want. It's kind of just free form. We can put tasks here as well. But here's the really interesting part, right? So we always need access to information when we're doing something. So for example, let's say I wanted access to my friend Gareth's
And
podcast.
can I say you're going to pull in other stuff you have in your base. Go ahead.
Exactly, but notice how little effort there is involved. Like I'm literally just searching for something. In this case, I'm just gonna use podcast transcripts so you have something simple to work with. But let's say I wanted some book notes as well. Well, you know what? I read the book How to Take Smart Notes recently, and there we go. And so basically what you're talking about, and you think about this, right? This is that first step where, even the information that you need is like right at your fingertips. You're effectively eliminating any friction, between the ability to retrieve and the ability to use knowledge. So it becomes frictionless. And when, the retrieval of information is frictionless, that changes everything. But not only is it frictionless, it's all connected. So you can see here, it shows you, what's similar to this. Like, what are other notes that are similar to this? There's a sample project there, whatever it is. We'll call this, Pursuit of Purpose podcast project example. Well, okay, so this is one thing that you have to be really mindful of when it comes to AI. So if you title it
Labels
this,
or titles.
it's going to use titles are probably one of the most important, if not the most important thing in an AI-based knowledge network, because you have to communicate very clearly. So titles make it easy, but in a lot of ways, what I say is you title your notes the way you title your thoughts, you're never going to have trouble finding something. But so, we've got this basic template. We've gathered, some resources as I showed you. But let's actually have some real fun with this. Come up with just the most batshit crazy idea for a project you could think of.
Well, I was gonna. It's not the craziest one, but it was an example that I feel like probably took us a lot longer than it needed to. So, should I go with that? And you can tell me if you want something crazier. So we send out monthly emails to our software users, and we needed to create the topics of those emails, the content inside those emails, potentially blog posts that would be referenced in those.
Okay, great.
And then we wanted to include statistics on their account performance.
Okay, so say that one more time for me. Tell me everything you want included.
So it'd be like, so I would say the high level would be a monthly email that's on a different subject regarding online reviews. The software that we have is for online reviews specifically.
Okay.
So monthly topics.
Okay.
And then, and it's all related to online reviews and benefits and SEO and how it's all tied in, whatever. And then inside of each one of those, we would want to have a couple of articles or like things that we're educating the person on. And then we would want to have maybe some statistics that comes directly from their account. But that would need to be presented in like a logical way. Like, hey, guess how many reviews you got last week, or this is how many you sent, or something like that. And then I would say, trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, graphics or images that would be in there. I don't know if that's included in this or not, but like maybe some charts on like summarizing data. Yeah.
All right, I think I got all I need. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to use MEMS AI to turn this into a project plan. We will call this, what's your company's name?
Boolean review. And is just while this is running, turn this into a 30-day project? Is this a template that you had to load in, or it just is like, all right,
So,
this is what a 30-day
so
project is to me?
Well, so it uses my template because this is a template that I've put in here, right? So you notice these questions. So this was all based on that original template I loaded. So it does that, but it would have done that, without that, right? Um, so
It
this is
just
just
might not. It
for
would be more like one big paragraph instead of how you broke it up into sections and all that.
well, that's the thing, right? So when we're talking about AI, one of the things you need to do is account for the fact that it needs very clear instructions. Um, but you notice
Yeah.
how quickly, we've got basically a list of resources. We've got a project plan and action steps, and we can expand on this as well. We can keep kind of just going through iterations. That's one thing I think that people miss about AI is that you're not always going to get it right on the first try. But I mean, in general, this is like magic. I mean, especially when you have access to boatloads of information, it just works better and better. But the other thing that's cool about this is that it can take your own notes that are written in your own words and turn them and combine them into something well written for your own use. So it's pretty
And so
magical.
I'm
And
assuming that, like in your situation, you've got inside of Mem, you've got all of your transcripts from all of your podcasts. You've got all the
almost
people
all
that
of
you've
them. I
talked
mean, you
to.
got to remember there's a
Is it,
thousand of them. So just getting
but
them
you're
exported.
starting, yeah. Now you're getting
Yeah.
them in there because you're using this.
Yeah.
But you're saying that potentially it would automatically pull in stuff that you had conversation wise with other people and
Yes,
link that
exactly.
and everything.
And as well as my notes for my books. Yeah, it'll use that. And if you link the notes to, let's say you're writing a blog post and you say, okay, link the Cal Newport transcript and you just include it as a link, then it will reference that in the process. Or you can just say, hey, find this quote from Cal. What did Cal Newport say about this?
And then
So
we'll find that online and find the reference for it.
it'll find the reference in your own notes.
Oh, gotcha.
Like say it
Okay.
was the podcast, the interview that you did, you know.
Yeah.
So basically, like just think about how much information you come across day to day in your life that you think you might put to use at some point, but never can because you either forget about it or you save it somewhere and you can't remember where you saved it or all that, right? So
Yep.
this is effectively like having access to your, like intellectual curiosity and your knowledge curation all in one place, and that becomes very valuable when you learn how to put it to use. I mean, it's not just about collecting a bunch of information,
So that's sweet. So tell me, like, when did you come across Mem?
Probably about 2 years ago now, I think. I mean, it's been long enough that I don't remember. So it's been a while. I've used it for long enough at this point. I bet it'd probably have to be when the date of my first YouTube video was. So maybe at the end of 2019 or 20.
But you
the
were
beginning
pretty
of-
early in this because this was before ChatGPT was big, right?
Yeah.
And now does Mem integrate with ChatGPT?
So there are plans for that. But I mean, just imagine a ChatGPT style thing with your own notes.
And so did they build out their own, like, I guess this would be like ChatGPT has built this tool and
Yep.
they have created AI in their system to work a certain way. So Mem has literally created AI from scratch,
Well,
or are they
so-
leveraging a back end like
OpenAI
AI
is
tool?
OpenAI is an investor in Mem, so
Got it. Okay.
So they probably do. I mean, I don't know the details of the back end, like the technology, but what I can tell you is that it's don't get me wrong, ChatGPT is amazing. Like I've used it plenty, and there are a lot of things you can do with it. What Mem gives
Yeah.
you is like just the ability to do the same with your own information, like all your notes, not just the general internet, which I think is the big difference.
Okay. So, and then again, this becomes more powerful in a business setting if you have more employees keeping their notes in here also, or
Yeah,
any
I mean, at
other
that point-
like things that would be easy or important to reference, right?
So yeah, okay. So this is a good point because if you think about it, AI depends on a combination of two things: data and human input, and the data is human input, right? Every note you put in, every contact, all that, every best practice you store, whatever, every standard operating procedure, all of that is just data, right? Like if you look at it from the standpoint of a machine, and so your job is to keep feeding the machine, and the more clearly you feed that machine, and this is where, the skill of writing is becoming even more important than it was, ironically, in the age of AI than it was before, because like I have had friends who will get very frustrated when they work with AI because they're they don't understand. It's like, you've got to communicate very clearly with this thing. Like if you had a employee and you did a lousy job explaining how you wanted them to complete the task, and then they did a lousy job on the task, it's actually your fault, not theirs, because you didn't communicate.
Yeah.
And so it's really kind of a weird thing to think about. But like, one thing that has been very helpful for me, and I included a chapter in the book about this after a few of these experiences, was to start thinking about, this idea of, okay, you have to learn how to talk to AI, right? And what's the best way to learn how to talk to AI? To ask it, because it'll tell you, So one thing I would do often, and I still do, is when I have a ChatGPT prompt that takes multiple iterations to the point where I'm not getting what I need, I will, or if I get more importantly, when I do get the output I'm looking for, that's actually when I do this. I say, okay, I did something wrong here. I didn't communicate what I needed clearly from you in order to generate the output that you just gave me. So explain to me how you would like me to phrase what I'm asking you so that I can make sure I don't have to go through this many iterations in the future. So,
And would you write that entire thing out after that?
Oh, when it gives me the new thing, I just pop it into, I save it in a note in Mem. So I'll give you an example. When I was working on the book, one of the things that I wanted to be very clear on was that I wanted it to be clear that I don't think AI is meant to replace human creativity. It can't. It's meant to complement us so that we can do what we do best. And I knew my skill was in telling a story. It's not in editing. It's not in proofreading. It's not in structuring, all of which are important for a book, right? So I just started, and it all started on a whim when I used Mem, and I was like, write a table of contents for the artificial. I said, first day, it was like a Monday, I was like, write a synopsis, and I looked at it, and I was like, interesting. And the next day I went in and said, write a table of contents for this book. And it did, and when I saw the table of contents, the entire table of contents was basically notes I already had in my database. And so one by one, I went through, I filled them out, kind of, massaged them together. And then I ran them through ChatGPT for the revisions. And one of the things that I saw in the revision process was that if I didn't ask the same question consistently, the revisions would come out kind of funny looking, or they weren't consistent. So I asked ChatGPT, I was like, give me a prompt for you to help me revise the chapters of my book that I can use repeatedly. And basically it gave me a very simple prompt, which I included in the book. And my friend Matt said, he's like, that prompt alone was worth the price of admission. See, the thing is that the reason that this idea of prompt craft is so important right now is that, one, it takes somebody who has the ability to figure out how to communicate with this thing. And so for me, the big thing has always been, okay, what do I do? I guess in a lot of ways it makes sense. I'm an interviewer. So my natural instinct was like, okay, well, how would I do this from that framework? I will just ask the questions that I want to ask to start to figure out how to craft prompts, because that, I think, is what's missing, right? Is people get frustrated, whereas if you can do iterations, you will get to that output a lot faster. So it takes experimentation too. Sorry, I know that was a very long rant.
No, this is good. I'm wondering if I'm wrapping my head, I wanted to have you show me an output, if you have a good example you can think of I'm still trying to wrap my head around how is it linking, or how does the output look when it's linking to other things in your notes? Because let's say right now, if I start using Mem, I don't have any data in there. So I got to start importing my notes from other places that I keep notes, I assume, or begin the process of just putting my notes in here.
So this is a very good point. This is an important point, right? So the thing is, AI requires data. Your notes are data. If you don't have any data, then obviously it's not going to work as well. Now keep in mind, part of the reason ChatGPT works so well is it's had, God knows how much data fed into it, all right? But that's generalized data from across the web. Whereas in Mem, it's your personal data. And so what you have to do is you have to hit what I call the critical mass of knowledge, which is about 50 to 60 notes, when you start to see the ability to make connections between them. Because if you think about it as a network, and each node as a node inside of a network, what you're getting basically is network effects. The same way that Facebook only becomes useful when other people have Facebook. The more people that use Facebook, the more powerful and valuable it becomes. What you're talking about here is applying the same network effect to knowledge management, to your own personal knowledge. So the more of it that you put into the system, the more the value of it compounds. Unlike a linearly structured system like folders, where the more information you add to any folder type structure or any hierarchical structure, the more of a complex mess it becomes to manage. And at a certain point, it doesn't scale. It's impossible to scale a system that is organized linearly when you're talking about managing information. Think about it. Like, think about how much money and time people have wasted on this. Companies have been built to solve this problem. And think about the copious amount of time human beings waste simply because of this one problem.
Filing.
The ability
I mean, I would say at my old job,
manage information at scale. Like, that's it.
I 100%. I think that at my old job with this painting company I worked for, I remember having multiple meetings on just like, how do we structure our shared drive? And there's this like, there are people that are used to the folder and filing system of like, we have this business and this business.
The fact that it takes a meeting.
And one of the things that came up though was we need to treat it like Google. We need to treat it like Google search, where you can just type in the search bar into Google Drive and just find the documents. But then other people didn't like that because some people don't name documents well, and it's hard to find that. And so, but there were so many documents that literally needed to be in 4 different folders because of how they were organized. It's like, well, it doesn't actually belong in finance. It's actually an HR thing, but it's related to finance and it's a marketing thing. So which folder are you going to put it in? So it never ended up, and this is what you're saying makes perfect sense, that the folder or filing system is not a normal way to store information. That's not how our brain works either.
No, it's an incredibly inefficient way to do it, but that's how people have done it for so long. I mean, hell, Dropbox is a $1 billion business dedicated to this problem, you know? So I just, like, you know, when you don't have to think about how to organize information, you just find it and put it to use, like, that really kind of changes the game.
And so Mem is built it's a folderless, fileless thing. You just have notes and all of your notes in one place, and then you can tag people, it looks like, and what other like people, objects.
You can add tags, you can add tasks, you can, you know, import links. I mean, a good amount of what you do, the biggest issue for people when they first start to encounter Mem, the natural instinct is that it creates cognitive dissonance because, to your point, like if you are used to a, you know, linear organizational system, which in theory sounds like you have control over it, right? Because I can see where everything is, you know, I'm you know, but like anybody who has like done this long enough realizes at some point you spend more time trying to maintain and organize the information than you do put it to use. Like 100%. That in and of itself becomes a job. And so, you know, but the problem is that we've been taught to basically use linear processes and linear structures our entire lives to do nonlinear tasks, right? If you think about school doesn't need to be linear. There are kids who should skip grades and move on, or not take certain classes and not waste their time. It's like, and you know, the idea that we need to even be there for 12 years is ludicrous. Who says we need 12 years of primary education? Like, what if after 10th grade you're like, you know what, I've had enough. This place is kind of boring. Like, I'd like to go to college. Fuck this. We should be able to do that. If you're advanced enough to do that, you shouldn't have to be stuck in that situation. But problem is that that's just a ridiculous example. But if you think about that structure is linear. You have this idea that life is linear, which everybody who gets out of the real world knows that it's not. Nothing is linear. So, you know, when you talk about creativity, when you talk about, you know, imagination, when you talk about innovation, none of that happens in a step-by-step fashion, and yet we try to do it that way and we organize information that way. And so as a result, you are actually preventing the ability to access knowledge that is useful to do what you want to do. And you run into a limitation. It hits a ceiling really fast. You know, I mean, we're both podcasters, so you saw I was just asking you about a file management problem when we started.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would be curious to know. So Mem's one tool. Give me another
Yeah.
tool that's like, I don't know. I would say
Yeah.
like, what are people not aware of? That's like you have. This is so
So
powerful that you
there
should be
is a
using or leveraging.
so there was a very cool document editor called Type.ai. It's more of a document editor than a note-taking app, and it's faster than Mem for that purpose. But you can store any document in it. You can generate content. So, for example, you could take a podcast transcript, and it'll give you, in addition, it'll not only give you an option to summarize the whole document transcript, it'll give you options on the side and say where you can say, hey, these are some things that I could write about for you related to this note, and you can either copy the insight, or you can just have it do the writing for you. Or you can highlight a block of text in a podcast transcript. So if I'm wanting social content, I will go in, highlight this block of text, and just pull 5 quotes from this episode that I can use to promote on Twitter and rewrite them as tweets. So it's pretty cool. I think I'm pretty blown away by what it can do.
And so my
I've tried
assumption
a
is
lot
that.
of tools.
So when you've done when you just wrote a book, how much
Yeah.
of the book percentage wise is you versus AI writing that
This
book?
is a very good. Yeah, this is a question. So I was kind of alluding to this earlier when we were talking about the Chat GPT and revisions, but we ended up getting kind of going down a rabbit hole of prompt craft. This was one thing I was very intentional about. So every note that ever was used for the book was written in my own words. Right. That was one of the things that was really cool about Mem, is that it uses what they call content-aware AI. So it uses your own information to help you craft ideas. And so for example, I get 3 to 5 notes, I could put them together and say, okay, help me turn this into a section for a book. But to be candid, my sort of approach was, I'm going to write the first draft. I'll use this to help me in terms of thinking about organization. So for example, one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to use the acronym IDEA, because I'm a creator. So I was like, okay. So I literally took the table of contents, dumped it into ChatGPT. I was like, I need you to reorganize this table of contents to match the acronym IDEA, and then give me sections, titles for each section. Which, the amount of iterations a human being would have to go through to get to that, we're just not mentally capable of that kind of calculation. Yeah. Right? So that was useful, because it gave me, a structure, a way to kind of have an organizing principle for the book. But I had been just jotting down notes on AI and jotting down different thoughts on AI from all the books I'd read and all this stuff. Basically, I remember when I wrote the project plan and I saw the table of contents, I was like, these are all my notes. These are all the books I've read. I'm like, you know what? I can write this book, and I can write it. So to get to your question, so I did all the first drafts. I did all the writing. I had AI to help me with revision in terms of content, in terms of style, in terms of clarity. There were things that ChatGPT made shorter, which I actually asked it to put back. And I had a friend who said, he was like, one thing about this is there are moments where it feels like he's written by AI. He's like, but you actually get straight to the point. You don't really waste a lot of time here. And I'm like, well, that comes from years of writing, right? Dan Pink says, every word on the page should fight for its life to stay on the page. And so. And I also knew, I was like, this is not going to be a traditionally published book. I just want to get an idea out there, so it doesn't need to be perfect. And so yeah, I would say it was largely written by me, but I even write about this in the book, where I talk about the fact that we don't want to become dependent on these tools, right? Because we bring something. So this is based, you got to remember, on my own perspective, my own career, my own experience of 1,000 interviews, all the books I've read. So it basically is, the foundation of it is all my own knowledge. And that's another fundamentally important thing, because your ability to use these tools becomes, exponentially greater when you have a strong, sort of foundation that you're already working with. So to give you an example, I recently had a blog post and I wanted to have it revised. And so my thought was, I was like, okay, if I'm going to use AI to revise this, I don't want the AI to rewrite it. I want it to keep my content and the core ideas. It can fix, fixes. But I was like, you know what? I remember reading Jonah Berger's book, Contagious. And Jonah Berger had a framework for content that went viral. So I said, take Jonah Berger, using Jonah Berger's principles from his book, Contagious, revise this blog post so it has the elements of virality built into it. Now, if you think about that, the only reason I could do that is because I had read Jonah Berger's book. I interviewed him on my podcast. I knew I had to have the knowledge in my head to think of that book to ask ChatGPT to do what it did, right? So, like I told a
Because
friend, I was
the
like,
principles were in your notes because he discussed them on your podcast. Is that right?
well, they were there
Because
because I remembered.
it doesn't have the ability to take in the text of the book.
No, it doesn't have the ability. It probably has the text of the book stored somewhere inside of its database, but it knew, what I was referring to. No, one, because of all those things, I remembered that idea, and I was like, let's just try this, so I have you got to remember, I got like 1,000 pieces of information in my head from, like 100 different like just all sorts of sources, right? Like, because you have these little nuggets that you remember from certain books, and I remembered that book distinctly because I'm a content creator. I wanted to know, and I remember he analyzed, a wide variety of content in that book. And so I thought, well, this is an interesting model to apply, and I happen to know it. So this is where your existing knowledge becomes, really useful. So, I always say AI isn't going to make idiots into geniuses, but it will definitely make smart people a fuck of a lot smarter.
Yeah. Okay. So my next thought is, what are the so you're like, I've talked to a lot of marketing people that are using blogs for like or using AI to write blogs, ideate, come up with headers, titles, things like that. What other are there any other use cases? Like blog writing and book writing seem very applicable to I see how ChatGPT could assist with that. What else besides that?
All sorts of things, man. Goofy things. I had it write a dating profile for me. I was like, this is better than anything I could have written. I had it analyze a blood test for me. I dumped something like 400 episodes worth of podcast data from a spreadsheet into ChatGPT, had it analyze trends, make recommendations. Had it simulate, I basically had it simulate being a team member and said, pretend you're not an AI language model, but you're the CMO of the Unmistakable Creative podcast. Your job is to do 3 things: increase revenue, downloads, and email subscribers, and put together, 5 90-day plans, rank them by, effectiveness, potential impact, and ease of execution. So, in my mind, it's kind of like you could be. So let's just say, for example, you could imagine your ideal personal assistant, right? Just write it down as an exercise. Now I'm telling you this, I'm kind of wishing I had written it in the book. And you can ask this person anything you want, like any scenario you can dream up. So the reason I just thought of that, I was like, okay, if I wanted to have a Harvard MBA, what qualities would that person have? And then how do I replicate those in a chatbot like a ChatGPT, that does that. So pretty soon what we'll have is you'll have your own custom chatbot, which you're just making me think this is what I need to build next. And it's basically your own custom chatbot that basically lives on your desktop, accesses ChatGPT, which you can already do. I mean, you and I could build that in the next hour. And if we needed to know how, we could ask ChatGPT, hey, I want to build a custom chatbot that accesses ChatGPT from my desktop. Give me the instructions, give me the tools, and what I need to do this. And we could probably build it in the next hour.
Right.
See, and that's what I mean by the ability to create at the speed of thought. But again, you have to have a base of knowledge to think about things like this. I don't think it frees us from the need for human creativity, the need to cultivate specialized knowledge, the need to, do the things that humans do best, right? Like critical thinking and creativity and problem solving. Those are not the things that AI is good at. AI is good at doing things that take us for fucking ever and actually don't add a lot of value, And so the thing is that AI can do a lot of those sort of computational things faster. And why do we need a lot of these computational things? Because we're trying to execute something in the real world,
Totally. There's so many things that are making me think about. If I were to jump into using Mem, what would be so obviously I would say I obviously like trying technology in general, but if I'm going to use this, like right now I have Evernote, that I use Evernote more as filing all of the paper that we get in the mail. So if I get a bill or a utility thing or mortgage statement, bank statement, I just upload it to Evernote. And so Evernote is largely just document management, but
it's
similar
a black
to
hole of
what you're talking about.
Right?
Yeah, it's just a whole bunch of stuff about my life.
Yep.
I'm wondering if Mem is a replacement for that type of thing, or
Oh
is
yeah,
there
absolutely.
a like so you can
Yeah,
have
I
it
mean,
upload documents from a scanner and then it would like use OCR to transcribe
yeah,
what's on it, and you could
you
pull
can save
information from that.
you can upload PDFs to Mem, and then you can even view them in Mem and preview them in Mem.
Because I'm thinking that just as this is where my like a practical use case for me would be, could I export my entire database from Evernote into
Yeah.
Mem, and then every year, the reason that it's nice to have all these documents, my accountant will be like, "Hey, I need to know what your 1099 is for this thing," and I just as soon as I get mail, I just scan it in the computer, and then if I need it, I'll come back and look for it later.
Oh,
But
in
I just
Mem
don't want
even
to
better.
have
You can create
paper,
one
right?
note. You can create one note, put all those files in links, to that note, and share that one note with your accountant. Or you can share each individual
Well,
file with the accountant right in
what I
Mem,
was going to say, would it
and you can
have the
comment on them
ability?
in
This
Mem.
is I was going to go a step further and say, could I ask Mem what was the expenses for this thing, and does it have the ability to like go summarize notes of the last several years, or like all the utility bills from my rental or whatever? Like does it have the ability to do that type of thing?
I don't know if it can go that in. Well, if the content was in the text of the note, then yeah, probably.
If it's in the PDF, probably not.
That I don't know. I think not. There
Yeah,
are tools that do
because that
though.
would yeah, it would be cool if it could read. Like
Oh,
Evernote will read the
check out
text of the
check out
check out
Ask Your
what?
Own AI. Check out Ask Your Own AI.
Ask your own AI. And what's that?
So Ask Your Own AI is a very cool podcast. No, well, it's another AI document tool. Let me do this. I'm going to bring up an example really quick. So the way that this came about was I was thinking about. So I saw this, and my first instinct was like, "Wow, what if I could build a search engine?" Let me do this. That's why I can't access anything. All right. So what you're seeing here, basically, the idea behind this was really, I had basically 1,000, interviews. I'm like, what if I could actually access the knowledge from all of those 1,000 interviews? And so I uploaded a couple of transcripts, and I was like, let's see what happens. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, this is with one interview, and I have access to 1,000 transcripts, with advice from some of the smartest people in the world. And so basically, any document that's uploaded into here, you can ask it questions to. So you'll see this, and then it'll show me even where in the transcript that that was referenced. Like if we open it up, okay. So it looks like it's having. Okay, so that was the link to the actual document, but it'll even show you the reference text.
And is this something that so this is interesting.
it's
And then
built.
and it's ask.ai is the tool.
Yeah, here, and you can see this. So basically, my Ask AI. So like So yeah, this is incredibly cool.
Because tell me, I'm thinking this has already happened where we do one of the things I do is automation for clients. So I automate all their processes, connecting, use tools like Zapier, Make, and just direct API calls to send data from one app to another. And then we get questions on like, hey, this thing happened. What do we do about this? And then we're writing responses back via email to these questions that we're getting. I'm
And I'm guessing
assuming
you've
that we
written
could.
those answers 1,000 times.
Yeah, it's just like things that this is so similar to what the other person asked. And I'm wondering
Yeah.
if we could have this like, hey, you have a problem, ask the question here. And then it's like indexing all of the stuff that we've already asked. And then we could ask the customer, did this answer your question? And if it didn't, then we have somebody write a better answer to that particular one. But then that's indexed for the future also. You know what I mean?
You got it. I mean, it's so you see where we're going with this, right? Like when you have the ability to manage and access and utilize information at scale, it changes everything. It fundamentally changes
that's funny. It literally says on the website, save customers or employees from asking the same question and drowning in documents. Yeah.
So exactly. So you know, like this problem being solved means like the level of efficiency, we can do a lot of things we couldn't do before. It's not just the ability to access information and, you know, like it's the ability to combine it in different ways you never thought about. You know, like I could say, okay, based on my interview with Cal Newport, give me 5 ideas for a blog post to write, you know, stuff like that. I mean, it's so that's why I'm saying I don't think this is a replacement for human creativity because it all still depends on human input, you know?
Yeah.
But when you're able to operate at this kind of speed and at this kind of scale, this is actually probably, you know, kind of, I know we're getting close to the hour, so this would be a good place for us to finish up and kind of the foundational idea behind the book was based on a 250-year-old concept from a book called The Wealth of Nations, right? And maybe it's not 250. You'll have to fact check me on that. But Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations. One of the things that he talks about in The Wealth of Nations is that division of labor maximizes your output. That's obvious. You know, Henry Ford created the assembly line to manufacture cars at scale because he was able to divide labor. The only problem is that labor traditionally is prohibitively expensive. You run a company, you know this. Like it's expensive to hire people, not just to pay their salaries, but they're also sometimes a pain in the ass. They get tired, they get sick, whatever, right? So the thing is that what AI does is it shifts this power to divide labor at scale that was once only in the hands of large organizations with deep pockets and puts it in the hands of the masses. And when you have the ability to use division of labor with technology at scale, everybody effectively has an army in their pocket that can do a lot of things for them very fast and really well. And
that's awesome.
I mean, think about that. You have a small army of tools. And the thing that I always say is that you don't treat them like tools. You treat them like partners. Like the idea is to simulate a human team with AI tools. And suddenly you will start to see these sort of exponential gains in productivity that you kind of can't imagine. It's just, you get to a point where you're like, okay, what am I going to do? You know, like my harder problem now is not producing content. I can do that very easily. I'm like, what the hell do I actually do? You know?
Yeah,
because there's so many options to do.
Yeah,
things.
This is fantastic. So last couple questions for you. What I always ask everybody for 3 book recommendations.
Yep. Little Bets by Peter Sims. I think that has been instrumental to everything I've done in my career. I think it's a very powerful book because it teaches you how to take risks without being reckless and learning from your risks and iterating and doing it very fast. Making Ideas Happen by Scott Belsky is, as far as I'm concerned, the Bible on creative execution. And then what I would say is Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte, which is the Bible on how to organize and manage information.
Which one of those would you say is like your top choice?
Well, I would say the book that I think I have probably returned to the most is Making Ideas Happen. I feel that book is a gold mine. Like it's informed. I mean, that book I realized even 3 years later when I read it, I was like, wow, unconsciously I absorb these ideas and follow them every time I do something. Now I intentionally, like every template I have in Mem uses concepts from both Building a Second Brain and Making Ideas Happen because that book was just so fundamental to my ability to get things done.
Awesome. And final question, what is your favorite movie?
That would have to be Son of a Woman with Al Pacino. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember I always look up the ratings on these.
Yeah.
I feel like I've never actually watched this one. An 8 out of 10 on IMDb. Yeah, I've heard it. I've heard people talk about it, but that's awesome. And then if people want to get in touch with you, what is your recommended method for them to do so?
Just go to unmistakablecreative.com. That's the easiest place to find everything.
Sweet. And then you have Ask AI on that website?
Not yet.
Do
So
you?
that is going to be a paid for service. We're going to combine it because obviously every query costs money. So we like that's literally very few people have even seen what you just saw. It's just been quietly sitting in a beta launch. Like I built that in about 2 hours. I basically got
The
ChatGPT
Ask
to
AI
give me,
thing.
yeah, even all that landing page copy, the concept, the pricing models, all of that was done in like an hour while I was completely drunk.
That's
See,
awesome.
this is what I'm talking about. Like the fact that you could do things like this when you're like wasted on a Saturday night. Like think about it. Just
Yeah, this is
imagine being
incredible.
at the bar with your buddies on the phone and just like, hey, hold on, I got to build this thing, and like in the background, it's doing your work for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's this has been super interesting, and I'm hoping that the people listening are their wheels are turning like mine are because I think that there was a lot of hype around ChatGPT, and I've heard people talk about AI and other stuff that's coming.
Yeah.
But the thing that gets really exciting is when you have softwares that are incorporating it into specific things like Smart Suite. Just like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, their CEO was talking about how they're incorporating AI into being able to build out whole solutions inside of Smart Suite, and just like
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah, well,
going
I mean,
away
the,
by any
the
means, and
landing
there's
page,
just more unique things to implement.
the chatbot tool that I used to build a chatbot had an AI. It was like, you want to just use our AI to build your chatbot? Tell it what you want it to build.
Yeah, that's all. That
Yeah.
the chatbot being the Ask AI.
No, this is a different one. But I mean, Ask AI could do this for you. I mean, ChatGPT could literally tell us how to do this. I asked ChatGPT. I was like, okay, this is Ask AI's pricing model. This is how many customers I'm expecting, or how many customers do I need to get to break even, and how many customers do I need to turn a profit. So based on this, give me the price I need to charge for our first 10 customers to make sure we don't lose any money.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Sweet.
like,
Well, Srini, it was
Yeah.
super fun, and appreciate you taking the time to do this. And yeah,
My pleasure.
we'll have to stay in touch and let me know when you got another thing cooking. Sounds like you got like a dozen ideas. Now you seem to figure out how to execute on those.
Yeah. I mean, that's figuring out what we're doing next, and this is like these are all side projects. Is the funny thing. A lot of the stuff I've showed you.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your attention and listening to this episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. Your feedback and comments mean the world to me. If you liked what you heard, please take a second, leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. If you've got suggestions for future episodes or just want to say hi, shoot me an email at chris@chriskiefer.com. Don't forget, I make it a point to include all the links to the books, movies, and resources mentioned on this episode in the show notes. You can see those directly below in the description or on my website, chriskiefer.com. Thanks so much, guys.